You were listening to the Everything Goes podcast, coming to you all the way from the City of Angels. My name is Gus. And on these weird times, these strange times, there's nothing better than to talk strange. On this week's episode, I got Anthony back on the show, and we are discussing some of the weirdest, some of the strangest cases, some of the UFO cases, alien stuff. That's what we're discussing. We're discussing aliens. Do you believe? I do. And I hope you guys enjoy the show. So welcome back, Anthony, to the Everything Goes podcast. Thanks again for visiting us and joining us on the episode where we're going to be talking about some of the weirdest stuff out there. One of my favorite topics, aliens, and some of the craziest stuff about alien cases and just stuff that people don't believe in. So welcome back, Anthony. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's always a pleasure to be here. Great to be here again so soon too.
This is one of my favorite topics. I really wanted you to be on it because I think you're one of the people that kind of enjoys talking about like stuff like this. And this is a question I'm gonna ask you because I think most people out there in the world don't believe in aliens. Do you believe in aliens?
Do I believe in aliens? I believe that there could definitely be a very strong possibility of other life among the stars. Now, aliens is a very tough question because I think something that even I have trouble kind of understanding sometimes is why a lot of these aliens always have to be so humanoid. You know, like some of the accounts mention how they're either, short or they've got pale skin, but they always have human features, and that's always been the most interesting part to me. Why is it that these aliens are why do they look so human despite not being obviously human? And on top of that, I think another interesting question, I personally didn't think of it this way. This is something brought upon an astrophysicist called Neil deGrasse Tyson, where he brought up this question: why would another race from light years away, stars, a race that has technology to travel among the stars, where for us it would take thousands, millions of years to travel, and they are just traveling here within who knows how long, but fast enough to go from one star to the next, and they come upon us. Why are they interested in us when we, I would say, are inferior? We can only travel within our own solar system, and we haven't even gone to every planet at that.
Let me tell you my take. I believe that we are not the only ones out here in this humongous space. We're only one galaxy, and there's millions and millions of galaxies out there. There's got to be more life forms out there. And then, yeah, maybe we're probably one of the youngest life forms in the galaxy or whatever we're in. But I just can't believe, or I just can't cope with the fact that we are the only ones out here. I basically, and I do want to say I do believe in that there's more out there than we know, or than our government's actually letting us know. Maybe they do know that there's other races or species or whatever. What do you think? Do you think our government's actually holding back? What do you think?
I think it's a possibility, but I can't be too clear on the reasons why they would. I mean, sure, it would be huge news. Hey, there's another race out there, and maybe that's why, if they do have knowledge of it, that they're holding it back, because now we are against something that has vastly superior technology to us, and that might cause mass panic. We don't know what we can do to fend them off should we need to.
I think one of the reasons why, I think, like you mentioned right now, mass panic. I think most people just wouldn't be able to comprehend the fact that there's other life forms out there. Just imagine if the government would have come out and said, you know what? We are not the only ones. There are aliens that are among us. What do you think that'll do with the mass population? Will we just go crazy and stuff? What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I think for those who are interested, especially those in the scientific field, it's going to be extremely interesting. It's probably going to be a time in which we are most excited because we get to discover things that we ourselves don't know from a race that does. Now, for the general public, that's hard because that can conflict with many things that they believe in. So to know that there's other life out there, I think that would cause huge panic.
Oh, yeah. Religion. We could start with religion. Imagine what people with religion would think that, we're not the only ones out here. You think that we probably have a different type of God. Can you imagine what would happen to the worshipers of different type of religions?
And they would, if I try to put myself in their head, I think the first thing I would do is try to deny it. Like, our government is clearly lying. They've only said it. They haven't shown us anything, and they're lying. There's no way there's other life because our religion says otherwise. But
Yeah.
if the government shows you proof, like, hey, this is not ours, this is theirs, and we can see that there is something not from our world, then I don't know how to react to that from someone who's grown up believing only that we are the only life.
Okay, so let me get you straight. So are you saying, do you believe or you don't believe?
I'm saying that I believe there's a very strong possibility that I'm very open, and I am on the side that there is a very high chance that there could be. Now, there's no concrete evidence thus far, but I'm very much open to the idea that they exist.
Yeah. One of the things that bothers me, you said the scientific world. I think some of the scientific world, NASA and some of these big corporations, businesses, and people up high at and high atop, people with power, they know that. I believe that they know that there's something going on, or there's people in the background, or alien races here among us, or amongst the stars. I think some of these powerful people know that we are not the only ones out here, and I feel like I think it's to their benefit not to. Maybe they're it might be conspiracy. I might be a conspiracist. I don't know. That's just what I believe. But I feel like the government's not the only one that's holding a lot of the stuff back. I think there's other private companies or military people holding everything back from us, from the public. So that's just my take. That's what I believe.
I mean, no, you do bring up a good point that they might know more than they let on. And that's one way to see it. The reason on that end I can be a little skeptical. I'm not an expert by any means in terms of what they do and how they go about things, but from what I do know and how long it takes to reach just one planet in our own solar system, even if they did have the knowledge, it would only be hearsay. They hear from perhaps another race that's come, or another species, or aliens that have come by, extraterrestrials. But for NASA, we do not have the technology ourselves yet to go beyond our own solar system.
Yeah.
We can't send a man to go, to go discover this or to go discover that, because by the time we do, they'd be long dead in that ship. That's why we said probes.
Yeah, and it sucks because all this technology. And when's the last time we stepped on the moon? 1969, 1972, or something like that. Why haven't we gone back? I thought we were supposed to have a moon base by now.
I think there are several factors, and one of them is definitely society. I think as a society, we're more focused on what we do here and how we want to live, rather than focusing on the future of what lies beyond the stars. If you ask people, hey, do I really want to pay taxes for them to go exploring this when I could be paying taxes to ensure that I have life insurance plans, so on and so forth. People would probably rather pay taxes for that than to NASA.
It surprises me that you say that, because I mean, it's been what even if we say that back in maybe the 70s was the last time we stepped on the moon, the 70s to now, we're almost 50 years later, 40 years later. What is it, 80, 90? Yeah, almost 40 years later. That's the last time we stepped on the moon. How much more we could have advanced or done? We should be going to Mars, Venus, and all those other planets. But for some reason, we stopped. What scared us away from the moon? What happened? I don't know what happened. I'm telling you, I believe that there's more going on. Maybe like I said, I'm one of those like Fox Mulder type of guys. I just want to believe that there's more out there.
Absolutely. I think there's a very kind of a wanting to almost believe that there's something else. Just trying to imagine that there's something beyond us is just ever so interesting, and I think it kind of pulls a lot of people in. The thought of there being something else more advanced that we don't understand, that we want to know, I just think is a very attractive thing, really.
Yeah.
To find out that there's a race that we don't know about, that they're flying in things that we have no idea how it works.
And there's a lot of people out there that may not believe, because that's what they're taught. They're taught by a certain religion or by society itself. And hopefully this episode might change their mind or might interest them just like it interested me. Because like today I want to make them believe, or I want to make them think. Maybe not change their mind or their opinion, but just listen to some of these alien cases, UFO abductions, whatever you want to call it. Just listen to some of these stories, and hopefully they'll feel the same way I feel. Like, you know what? Damn, if this actually happened, I hope that either it's true or it's not true. I just want them to know that, or maybe even think that we're not the only ones out here.
Right.
Yeah. So where do you want to start?
Where do I want to start? Okay.
What is it when you hear the alien thing? What is the number one thing you think about aliens when you think about like aliens and alien abductions? What is the number one case or whatever you think? What is it?
Okay. If we're talking about it like that, two things mainly pop up, and that's got to be the Travis Walton case, most popular, or is definitely popularized by Fire in the Sky, and Roswell. Those are the two that I immediately think of when you think of alien abduction, Fire in the Sky with Travis Walton, and then an alien case in general, Roswell. I don't think there's anyone who hasn't heard the name Roswell.
Okay, so you kind of hit it right on the dot when it comes to alien abductions, and it's one of the most interesting alien abduction stories out there. I totally want to talk about it, but real quick. So you want to start on alien abductions, or do you want alien cases? I feel like we should like kind of like blend in and then leave the alien abductions till last. I don't know. Maybe we could integrate that with some of the alien cases.
We can start with Roswell, because Roswell is a real interesting one, especially since it concerns the military.
Okay. See, that's the main one. That's for me. That's number one. When everybody thinks about aliens, everybody knows Roswell, New Mexico, crash 1947.
All right. So from what I can recall, Roswell was an incident where an aircraft had crashed, I believe, into some fields, and I think it was a farmer who came upon it and saw that whatever this was, it was shiny, it was silver, and it was something he had never seen before. Contained metals that he didn't recognize either. From there, I believe he goes, tells the news outlets about it, becomes this big story. Soon after, the military come to it, and I forget the officer's name. I don't know if he was an officer, but I know it was someone who confirmed that it was indeed an alien craft that had crashed. And I believe by the next day, it had turned out that the story had changed entirely, and it was a weather balloon.
Supposedly, right?
Supposedly, it had turned into a weather balloon.
See, that's where it hurts, man, because the military came out with the report that yes, they have recovered an alien or an alien ship. That's what they reported first, and then they retracted the report, and they had to redo this thing where it says, you know what, it was a weather balloon. How dumb was that, man? Come on. You told the news outlets that, yes, we recovered an alien thing.
Because it's very hard to mistake a weather balloon for, a weather balloon for an alien craft. How do you mistake that?
Yeah, see, now that's hard. That kind of bothers me, man. I look at it and I'm like, God. And then this is the mother of all crash, supposedly. And we're going to dive into this because in Roswell, New Mexico, that's where supposedly, I really want to say this too. I mean, you kind of like brought it up, but not only did they find weird material, but it was actually a rancher, Mark Brazel. He found it
was a rancher.
Yeah, and it was during a lightning storm out in New Mexico, and supposedly this thing that was hovering out there was hit by lightning, and it crashed. So he was there for a couple of days until he walked up to it and he saw these things that were out lying on the floor, metal objects everywhere. And so he called up the army base and told them, "Look, this is what I have on my ranch out here." And so they came. Supposedly they found little humanoid aliens lying out there, burnt, broken, and this is where you hear conspiracy theories that they found a live one. And this is for those people that have seen the alien autopsy on one of these humanoid aliens or whatever. And that's where the whole myth starts about aliens. And this is where it starts. This is the mother of all things, of all alien stuff. This is where it started with this case. Like you said, The guy, the army came out. They said they recovered a crash alien, and then by the next day they said no, it was a weather balloon, and they had like these people. They took a picture with these weather balloons. They supposedly they made this guy take a picture with these weather balloons, and then that's what they put on the front page. But that's where it all started with the Roswell, New Mexico incident of 1947.
It's a very this is one of the ones where even I have a little trouble understanding it entirely of whether, because you think of a weather balloon,
No.
you've already got that material that's going to be keeping this balloon in the air, like a hot air balloon. It's got that huge kind of tarp-like thing keeping it up there. A weather balloon, I believe it has components of aluminum foil, something of the sort, a substance like that. So there isn't a lot of, I wouldn't imagine there's a lot of metal there, because you're trying to keep something in the air, and you're also trying to keep it from attracting things like, lightning, and you don't want it to be struck down because you're trying to study it. So why would there be metal components in a weather balloon?
And it's not that, like you said, those are just metal that these people had never seen before. Like one of the guys, the rancher itself, he talks about how like crumple it up, and then like the metal would just go back to its normal form, kind of like paper almost, and they couldn't do anything with it, or they didn't know what type of metallic stuff it was, and and that's where it all started with these guys.
And we certainly don't have any metal of that sort. The closest you might be able to get to it is maybe Jello, maybe. Like you squeeze it and it might take its original form, but that's it.
Right.
Certainly no metal. There are some probably interesting points I'd like to point out.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when it comes to actual aliens in Roswell, them taking out the bodies and whatnot, that's where I find it to be a little more on the skeptical side.
Yeah.
Because so we've got an alien crash, an aircraft crashing, and you've got bodies, right? But my next question is what's a rancher doing on the site? Maybe he might have seen them outside of the aircraft, but other than that, how does he know?
Well, he doesn't. That's what supposedly it happened. One of the stories is that this rancher took some of this metal paper or whatever into his house, and
the metal substance, yeah.
Yes, and his son saw it with his dad, and he showed him like, look, I can't break it. I can't even crumple it. Whenever they would crumple it, it would like go back to being whatever metal looking kind of thing, kind of like paper. It would just go back to its normal way. And they didn't understand how that was it, and how that was metal at the time.
I wouldn't understand it. If I try to take, like, for example, cornstarch, when you put more pressure on it, it begins to harden, right?
Yeah.
So with this metal, the way it's acting, I haven't heard anything like it at all, because when you apply pressure on it, it just crumples up like paper, and then when you release your hand, it goes back to its original form.
Yeah.
So by the same token, if you're coming down at a very reasonable rate where you're going to crash, I don't understand that technology. Why would it just kind of cave in on itself? Because that's what's going to happen if you're able to hold it in your hand, you apply pressure and it crumples up. The same thing is going to happen if you're going into a floor. You're just going to kind of fold in on yourself. So how does that help you as an aircraft, as a material itself? That's what I don't understand. We're going off the assumption that it's real. How does this material even begin to work?
Let's do a deep dive into this, because not only supposedly this metal was discovered, but there's this, his name is actually Colonel Philip J. Corso. He's a retired Army guy. And he came out, 50 years later, claiming that he was in charge of some of the, I don't know where he was at the time, some Army base. I don't know. I don't want to get into the specifics, because then we'll be here all day. But this is what he claims. He claims that he was in charge of developing some of the technology that was taken out of this craft. For instance, this is what he claims, that supposedly out of this craft, this type of technology came out of stuff that he didn't understand, but he was in charge of it. And this is where it goes, that we had the 50-year leap. Night vision goggles was discovered because of this. Lasers, atomically aligned fibers, chips, weapon and optics. reverse engineer technology. All this from Roswell crash, the microwave, all this kind of stuff. It tells you the stuff that he claims that we got from this craft. And this is why it's one of the biggest alien cases, and any alien guy knows about Roswell because of supposedly what came out of this crash.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of got stuck on the microwave point there because, well, I guess based on a lot of technology itself, I think what a lot of people don't always realize is a lot of what we have today as technology was originally purposed for military reasons. For example, the microwave.
No.
From what I know, as another story of how the microwave came to be, if I remember, they were trying to send messages through just that microwave. And
Yeah.
it just so turned out that somebody had placed a chocolate bar on the microwave and it melted.
Mm.
And there, at that moment, became the microwave because the waves, when they vibrated, they created heat, and the moisture would just evaporate heat. It would vibrate so violently that it would heat it up. That's how
Mm.
microwaves work today. So for him to say that we got a microwave from the whole Roswell crash, that's a very interesting thing to me
Yeah, he talks
because
about. Well, he also talks about like these fiber, like the Kevlar, uh, the microchip.
the microchip, those are all things I definitely can explain. If they did
Yeah,
come, they are advanced for sure.
yeah,
Phones, they used to be big, bulky things. Next thing you
yeah.
know, they start getting slimmer and smaller. They fit in your pocket. They can go everywhere with you, with
Yeah,
you just a short span of years too.
yeah. So I mean, we spend enough time with this case. Let's talk about the other one. The Rendlesham Forest incident, the Aurora, Texas UFO crash, the Battle of Los Angeles, the Phoenix Lights. Which one do you want to talk about?
Let's go with the Battle of Los Angeles. That
Okay,
one's definitely interesting.
see, this is during the time, I want to say a week after the Pearl Harbor bombing. So everybody was at
On high alert.
yeah, they were high alert. The East Coast, the West Coast. So this is what happened, the Battle of LA. What happened is that we were on high alert, and during the nighttime, during the night hours, they started hearing the alarms ringing, or it got caught on. They picked up this object on radar or whatever it was at the time, and they started bombing it. They started like letting these shell casings going up in the air, and that's where you get the Battle of Los Angeles, because they really thought it was the Japanese coming to start bombing us here in the West Coast. They really thought that that's what was going on, that we were being invaded by the Japanese because of what happened at Pearl Harbor. So they started firing at this thing at night, and witnesses say that they saw an object up there. They saw these things, all the firing, they were hitting this object, and the object was just there doing nothing. Shell cases falling on people's backyards and stuff. It actually comes out on an episode of UFO Hunters, I'm gonna say. So they go back and they talk to these witnesses when they were kids or teenagers, and now they're like in their late 60s, early 70s, and they talk about stuff like that, like what the things that they remember or their parents remember talking about stuff like this. So, and it's one of the biggest cases I hear that in the United States or in the West Coast itself. It's called the Battle of LA. It happened here in my hometown, LA. Yeah, man.
Okay, so the Battle of LA in general, I think, is interesting on many fronts. One, the fact that it's happening during World War II, and it just happens a little after we get pulled into World War II because of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So for the Battle of Los Angeles, we have to imagine they've got anti-air guns, anti-air shells meant to, explode, throw fragments out there to go ahead and destroy engines and parts
Yeah.
of the plane.
Yeah.
And then you've got this object up there. Light. You've got lights shining up on it. It's got some glowing parts that people can clearly see. And the thing is you can't just say one person saw it and it didn't happen, because you have military forces expending their resources under the belief that they are currently going to get bombed or invaded by the Japanese.
They also have a picture. It came out the next day on the newspapers. So if you ever look up Battle of LA, there's this one picture that comes out, and that's the picture that was on the front page of the news the next day. And that's where they get the name Battle of Los Angeles, because of that picture. And it shows like people bombing it, like you can see the flashes and whatever, even though it's black and white, but that's what you see.
I'm actually looking at it right now. as we speak.
Oh, so you see it?
Yeah, they've got their lights on a craft for sure, or
They
something
something's
of the
out there,
sort.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, something's out there.
But yet the military, what did they do? They said it was kind of like a training exercise or something like that. Come on. People saw this. There was an object up there. People saw that. But yet the military denied it. No. It was just we were just testing something out or whatever. Oh yeah.
I
Fucking,
find it very hard to call it a test when you are not using training rounds,
yeah.
You're using live ammunition on something. Live ammunition, and that's a very big word because you are putting real shells out there that explode with fragments no less above your home country.
No.
You've got citizens down there. Something falls, something goes wrong, you're going to have problems, and you call this a training exercise.
Yeah. So yeah, it happened, man. For those people that live in LA, it happened. And I just wanted you to think about, back in those days, a week after Pearl Harbor. I think most people don't find it funny that you're bombing right above LA, and they're thinking, World War III has
The
started, or World War II has started in the United States.
Like right, the enemy has reached our shores.
Yeah, I'm
That's
pretty
what people
sure.
are thinking.
Yeah, people. Just imagine, put yourself in their shoes. You think that, damn, we're at war and it's coming here.
Yeah, we're like it's clearly a big war if you have world powers,
Yeah.
Russia, Britain, and of course America. No, well, now America at that time because we had just got drawn in by the Japanese, and there you have Germany, the biggest enemy that takes three countries at the time to come and actually defeat Germany,
Yeah.
Japan, and then you have Italy.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely no joke. And the fact that we were just bombed, the turmoil is extremely high. People are always going to be on edge
Yeah.
because we were just bombed on our home turf.
Oh,
Unexpected at that.
yeah, no, I'd be freaked out myself. No, well, that's where it becomes crazy because that's where people like that don't believe start saying, well, you know what? This is how crazy it sounds. Come on, man. This is where it becomes a hoax and you guys are the laughing stock and nobody believes stories like this. This is why one of the reasons that alien cases are not taken seriously because of somehow these. It sounds outrageous. Think about it.
No, absolutely, especially for me because it leaves the way we understand this world and how it works,
Yeah.
in which they can be very much grounded in reality. They can be very much grounded in science because the thing about science is we don't always know everything. The possibility of something really being true like that metal substance, it defies what I know, but it could be possible.
Mm,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We just don't know it yet. But in terms of when it comes to the mind itself, things we don't one understand, but two, you're talking about touching a metal. You
Yeah, no, I get you, and it's one of the craziest things and stuff. But let's move on now. So these are some of the cases that people that are very popular out there. Let's jump into some of the abduction ones that people have heard. And let me describe one thing real quick. And I don't know who came up with this, but this is the way they categorize alien cases. Close encounters of the first kind, which is a UFO in close proximity. Close encounters of the second kind, UFO that leaves markings on the ground, causes burns or paralyzes a human, frightening animals, interferes with car engines, TVs, radios, or receptions. And then close encounters of the third kind, which is a UFO which has a visible occupant. That means you could see an alien through the damn thingy. Two other classifications were later added, and they are close encounters of the fourth kind, which is they include alien abduction cases, and that's what we're going to be talking now, the alien abductions. And the last one, close encounters of the fifth kind, where communication occurs between a human and an alien being. So we're going to talk about close encounters of the fourth kind, which is alien abductions. And some of these I chose these because it's going to make you think. It's going to make you think. And one of the first ones that I really want to talk about is Barney and Betty Hill, the abduction of Barney and Betty Hill, 1961.
very, very popular. I think everybody, at the very least, has heard of it if they don't know the details of it. So, I'll let you actually explain the story because I think I'm a kind of give my opinion on a lot of this rather than explain it very well.
Well, real quick, I'm not gonna go into details, but this happened in 1961. They were driving down this main road at night, and people are coming back from an event. I don't know where they were coming back from, but it was in the middle of the night. And as they were driving, they thought that the moon or the stars or whatever was shining bright, and they kind of was like, "What is that?" And then they see it getting closer to them, and then like all of a sudden they feel like they're being followed by this thing, and the next thing you know, it's in front of them. And what happens is that Barney and Betty are the first ones to supposedly they come out with the abduction story where they got abducted by these small gray aliens, and they got taken out of their car and they got probed, and they tell their story of how and what happened to them. And they had one of the first people that say, you know what, after all that happened, they felt like had missing time. And what they remember is like they were a couple miles down the road, like, hey man, we were way too far or way too close to where we were at. So they had missing time, and they knew something happened. They weren't even going the right way or something like that when they got brought back. But this is what they remember after being abducted, after they were having these nightmares at night. So they went into what they called regression. One of those doctors that does like regression therapy crap. And what happens is that this is what they remembered under this regression therapy, and they said, and they got probed. They got whatever that you think that they do in there.
Definitely the most interesting part is the way it happens and the way they end up, because I do know quite a few details on it, and if we're talking about from the moment they're getting abducted to when they finally come back. From their reports, they're saying that they heard a beeping and a buzzing. They lose
Mm.
consciousness, and when they come back, they hear the same beeping and buzzing for a little bit, and they're 35 miles from where they just were, and that's where the missing time comes in. They're 35 miles down a section of a road that they shouldn't be, and they don't remember anything for those 35 miles from where they were.
Mm.
And keep in mind, 35 miles, that's quite a drive. You've gone down some way, and you do not remember that time in between. So that's where I do find it to be quite interesting, because you hear a beeping and a buzzing, you lose consciousness. You
Mm.
wake up to the same sound, you're 35 miles down the road. What happened in between?
Yeah.
And
That
that's
missing time.
missing time, but it's I like the thing that interests me most is when they begin to have these dreams, or more or less what one might call their memories in their dreams on the abduction. You have to remember that this is happening, and they're somehow 30, like they're abducted, all these experiments are happening, but they're back on the road on the same day, and they're 35 miles down. Their car had to have been moving or moved there, and they're back in it, and they
Yeah.
remember nothing, while they're taking showers, and they notice things around
Yeah.
their genitals, so on and so forth, things that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. I think this case is probably the most famous, because I think it's one of the most if not the first one of the first cases where they actually it was reported to the media that this what happened to this couple, and how they got abducted and what happened to them because of these aliens. And and they tell their story, and they became worldwide a news phenomena. And that's what happened. They became one of the, if not the first ones, one of the most famous people of all time because of what happened to them.
Their
And
case is definitely a
yeah,
mystery.
yeah, and it's, what and this is the thing, what they did. They used regressive hypnosis. So they went back to see, what happened to that last time, and that's what happened. And they tell that story where they got abducted and they got probed, and they were the first ones. And this is where like these cases become very odd and scary, because now you're not just looking at an alien ship. Now you're being taken as an animal almost. You get me?
You're a science experiment.
Yeah, you're right.
They're looking at your
Exactly.
body, and they're doing things to you that you would probably rather not have done to you.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, let's move on. And I
Right.
think I think this one's one of the biggest ones. It has a movie. I know anybody that's an alien buff or whatever, pretty much a lot of people in the 90s have seen this movie. Do you want to talk about this one?
Sure, The Fire in the Sky about Travis Walton. Driving down the road with a couple of his friends, they see a light in the forest. So Travis stops his truck, walks closer to it into the forest, and then all of a sudden he sees the light gets brighter. He doesn't remember what happens. He's abducted, and his friends see an aircraft take off, and their friend Travis Walton doesn't come back. A week later, of course, during that week, he's reported missing. The sheriff thinks that his friends are the murderers of Travis Walton, but a week later, Travis Walton shows up naked in a phone booth.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the craziest stories. These guys were out there in the mountains of New Mexico cutting down trees, and it was at night, they were going back home, and like you said, they saw this ship or a glowing ball of light out there, and then Travis gets out and he gets hit by a beam of light. This is what you forgot to mention, that these guys, what are the other 7 or 6 guys that were in the car, once they saw Travis get hit by this light, they take off without him.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's one of the biggest things, because they were calling his name not to get too close, come back into the car or whatever, and he wasn't paying attention. He just didn't want to hear it, and he got up close to the object and he got hit by this blue light or whatever, and he flew backwards, and these guys freaked out, and they took off and they left him there. And that's where that story begins. And well, like you said, these guys were the whole town didn't believe him what happened to Travis, and they were pretty much, like you said, the sheriff at the time didn't believe him. Nobody believed him. They was about to get charged for murder or something like that. Luckily, a week later, Travis showed up, and that's where it all started. And did you mention that the fact that these guys all passed the polygraph test?
Oh, the polygraph. Yeah. So I believe more commonly known basically as the lie detector test, where they go ahead and put something, I believe, on your chest. They put a few patches somewhere on your body. They ask you a series of yes or no questions, and you answer them. And this polygraph test goes ahead and determines on whether you're lying or whether you aren't. So in this polygraph test, all of his friends, aside from one, the questions that were asked to them all came out true. The test determined they were telling the truth. Now, when it came to that last friend, it didn't necessarily say that he was lying. It came out inconclusive. Yeah. So that's the strongest evidence in that sense, that that they were telling the truth, essentially, that they weren't lying, that these events really happened. Of course, there are inconsistencies with the way they say things, but that's going to happen when you have 6 or 7 people who are obviously in a state of panic. Yeah. They're not going to remember everything the same way. Now, of something also pretty important to remember is that a while after, Travis himself shows up on a Fox game show called The Moment of Truth, and he was yet again put on a polygraph test. And they asked him the question, were you abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975? He replies with the yes. The polygraph test said he was lying.
See, again, this is where it happens, where like people like that want to like debunk these things, they'll jump on that and be like, oh man, you see, I knew it. This guy's a big ass liar, and he wants to make money or become famous. But everybody knows about Travis Walton, if you know his story, that for many years he didn't want to talk about it. He not too long ago, he came out, like recently coming out and talking about his story more often. But in many years, more than 20 plus years, he didn't want to talk about it at all. He made no money off it, not till now, like where he's actually like talking about it, giving interviews. But before that, he didn't care about the fame and fortune or whatever it was supposedly that supposed he was gonna make. But yeah, it happened. And if you haven't seen this movie, Fire in the Sky, it shows what he supposedly went through, or what alleged of what happened to him. And it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary because of what they show in there, of how they treated him kind of like a lab rat.
Oh, they treated, from what the movie showed, they treated him exactly like a lab rat. They put you on like this table, you're strapped down, and they just some of the tools that they use in there too.
Exactly, right? It's pretty
Like,
scary. Pretty scary.
I would hope that their tools are less painful, but
Yeah,
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 from
yeah.
that movie, it didn't look like that.
I mean, I'm hoping that it was just a movie kind of thing, but suppose it's very accurate to what he went through. How he suppose he woke up on like this gooey substance, and he didn't know where the hell he was, and the movie has this. I think this is one of the main parts that kind of scares me to be in an alien to get abducted. Is that part where he's being dragged through the ship by his foot or by his leg by.
Oh yeah, it was something like that.
I just hope that they don't do that to me if they were ever abducting me, man, because then that'd be over for me. I'd have a heart attack there, man.
This is where you hope that they're, a little nicer because of how technologically advanced. Can you just put me on something and roll me there, please?
Right? God, you would think just put me to sleep, dude. Don't drag me
Right.
through the floor, right?
I don't have to be awake for this.
So yeah, so that's what happened. These guys were about to go to jail because nobody believed them. Nobody believed them. Small town, nobody believed them. They thought they killed their fellow coworker. And luckily Travis Walton came back, saved everybody. But even when he came back, they were gonna charge him for lying or something like that, or they wanted to.
It's an unbelievable story, really.
Yeah.
From the way you look at it.
Yeah. I mean, for those people that don't believe, check these cases that we're talking about, and you'll believe. Well, not maybe not believe, but it'll make you think. That's what I want you guys to understand.
Definitely think. I know for me, these definitely made me think. They do come into conflict with a little bit of how I perceive the universe and its advances because I look at aliens and what I would think their nature would be. Like you
Yeah.
have this race who's coming from again like systems and systems away, traveling across our galaxy to get over to where we are. And sure, we may be younger in life and they want to study us, but why there's so many abduction cases, and I don't know if maybe it's just different races of alien coming here,
Oh, there
but
is.
when you
Supposedly.
think about it, no, supposedly yes, but when
Yeah.
you think about it, what more do you want to learn by abducting a body? What more can you learn from it? Like they're doing all these tests, and I think about it as like, what are you looking for within us? What do you want from the human body that you possibly couldn't just
Yeah.
I don't know, like there are more easier ways to go about it,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, now that you mentioned that, I mean, we could talk about that because supposedly, if you've seen or read any of these books like I do, I mean, you hear different theories about the Greys. Well, that's another thing. The first thing you think about aliens is always these big ass humanoid with big black eyes and small mouths, no
Either
ears, and
green or gray or
yeah, yeah.
some
But
color.
specifically the Greys. They're called the Greys, and I'm pretty sure that most people that think about aliens think about these right here. And you mentioned earlier the tall Greys, the short Greys, and I mean you've heard of different species of the reptilians, the ones that look like grasshoppers or the moths or whatever, and you have the Nordics, there's many of them. If you've been around alien talk, you know what I'm talking about. People that have been in contact with these people or been abducted, some of them come back with stories saying that they're here to observe the human race. We're a violent race and we're destroying our world. So they're here to observe but not get involved. What do you think
Oh,
about that?
I mean, a violent race, sure. History, I think, would definitely vouch for that. I'd say at the moment, despite the recent, tragedies, I would say we were probably at the most peaceful time we've really been in.
Really?
I would say so. Yes. We're
All right.
not.
We're still at war with Iraq. We still have military out there in
Oh,
Afghanistan.
sure. Yeah. There are obviously going to be wars, but compared to World War II, like World War One, World War II, those years between like 1930 all the way up to 1950, those are very violent years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the time before that, our history is just nothing but war upon war and upon war. But I think war itself, although it's become certainly deadlier, at the same time has become a little less violent. Now you look back at Crusades, we're not going out there pillaging small towns and raping. You don't do that. We have
Yeah,
standards as a society now.
I would disagree, and one of the reasons, one of the other theories or stories you hear out there that these aliens are here is because we are a species of violent acts. That includes they know that we have atomic weapons, and these weapons can
We have the ability to
basically,
destroy the earth. Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons supposedly that they came more often. One of the theories is that they saw what we were doing to this planet, to ourselves. They saw these, they saw what we were capable of doing now with these weapons of mass destruction, they call them, because that's what they do. They evaporate and then eliminate life.
It's
And I mean, we
that.
almost went to war. Remember the
No,
Cold
yeah.
War or whatever. We were
We were always on the tip of the iceberg of starting a war with Russia.
yeah, but
Or not the tip of the iceberg, but
it, it was not gonna be a regular war. It was gonna be a nuclear war.
it was
Remember that?
going to be a war of mutual destruction.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
person presses the button, the next person does.
I think the difference now is the fact that we are not the only ones that have
This
nuclear
kind of
weapons.
power now,
We're
yeah.
not. The Russians have it. There's other countries that have nuclear weapons in North Korea. It just takes one button, that's it. The human race is done for. Not only the life, but it causes radiation poisoning. It kills whatever it's there for many of years. It's just not. It just doesn't kill you there. It kills the whole
Oh
planet.
no, 4 nuclear bombs, and we go into a nuclear winter, possibly killing most of life as we know it.
Yeah, exactly. And see, that's one of the theories or stories you hear about why we see aliens and alien abductions, and they study us because of the type of race we are.
It's both interesting and all at the same time. Um, it can be hard to believe in that aspect by itself. They're here to observe us. I can believe that, sure.
Yeah,
Another race from a distant system wants to look at us
yeah,
and see how we progress.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely, but then you come to the point where they're observing us because like they're trying to help us not destroy each other.
yeah,
But then you look at it and okay, well they can easily go to the military, and for people who do believe in it, sure, they've already gone to the military.
yeah,
Um, we're exchanging information in that sense
yeah,
with this different race. But if that's the case, why the need of abduction?
yeah,
Why the need to put yourself out there and make a bigger name than you really want to have? If you're just there for observing and for information and you want to keep it discreet, you go to the military. The
yeah,
military will suppress it for sure.
yeah.
So then why abduction?
That
What's the need for it?
I don't know. That I don't know. Oh, you know what? Matter of fact, this is another story here. Now that you're asking that question, why the abductions? How about this one? And you hear this throughout some of the stories of abductions that they see human hybrid aliens and human hybrid or humans, whatever. They're cloning people. They're cloning themselves and they're cloning us and they're cloning these hybrid aliens or whatever. And you hear that a lot where people get abducted, they get sperm taken out and they take their eggs out and then they bring them back and they see a kind of like a hybrid alien child of theirs and that's what they're doing because so one of the stories, and I'm gonna just touch it briefly, is that they are too advanced mentally and spiritually or something like that that they don't look at it. They don't see themselves as they're all scientific. They lost their way of I guess of what's the word doing it the
The
natural way.
old-fashioned way.
Yeah, the natural way. And they're trying to get back to that. They made themselves like that. They made themselves because that's all they do was they're thinkers and they never thought about. That's one of the theories, I guess.
That I mean, I guess for a very you trying to look at it as
And it's crazy, huh?
scientifically as possible. It's not impossible to say that there's a race out there that has lost the need to reproduce, not by any means, but if you don't have a means to reproduce in a natural way, in terms of like going about it the old-fashioned way,
Yeah.
then how do you make more of yourself? And I guess maybe that's the reason why
Yeah.
you could argue that they would be coming over here and making hybrids. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting concept. All the while, it's I don't know. I would think that this amazingly smart race creating a hybrid would, one, there would be difficulties. I'm sure there have been, assuming it's true. But two, I would imagine that whatever they are is vastly superior to humanity. So
Yeah.
why are they not like? They should be something big, and they're not. If some hybrid
Yeah.
genetically, there's something different there. They go to the doctor. There's something different, and it should be taken note of. What
Mm,
is this? What is that? Things that
yeah.
shouldn't be there that are present.
Well, it's weird because there's all these questions, there's all these theories, there's all these stories, and specifically the Greys. You hear that they're more robotic when people talk about these things. They look at you with these soulless eyes. They say, and that's the scary part because they looks like they have no emotion whatsoever, and they don't talk to you, but they could talk to you through the mind.
Telepathically.
Exactly, and
Telepathy,
I
yeah.
think that's one of the reasons that people get scared of them more often. That and the fact the way they look, but they show no emotion. It's like something dead just grabbing you. It's one of the reasons people get terrified of these things. Be one, their look, and the other thing is they show no expression whatsoever. They're like robots.
Um,
Oh,
I think in that
so
sense that's a very reasonable thing to be afraid of because you don't know, one, if they show emotion. They're technologically more advanced, and the way I would think of this is, if I think any scientist might be able to understand really, is if you have something that you don't understand, and if you're thinking like a scientist, remember, you're trying to remove as much as the human in you away from the equation because you don't want to affect it. So you look at a very advanced race, and then you compare it to the emotionless tall gray.
yeah.
It's kind of like they're here to study, observe, and experiment. That's it. And in that sense, that's scary because if they want to find something out, they're gonna do it. And depending on what it is, it might not be as pretty as you'd like it to be.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from these alien races. Let's talk about one guy in particular that everybody's gonna know. His name is Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar worked on this infamous Area 51. And anybody that knows about alien stuff knows about Bob Lazar and Area 51. You want to talk about it?
Sure. So if I remember, he's an engineer. I'm forgetting. It's something to do with I want to say aerospace
Yeah,
engineering,
something
something of
like
the
that.
sort,
Yeah.
something along those lines,
Yeah.
definitely. But if I recall, I forget how he does it, but I believe they offered him a job and he had to go in the first day onto the base, sign a bunch of paperwork or whatnot, go through that. The second day, I believe he meets his lab partner, and he goes, his lab partner is excited, trying to tell him, hey, this is what I'm working on, this is what we're going to be working on, and he goes in there, and I believe he describes it as kind of like a sphere, a spherical object. I want to say it was being held up by something, but it was supposedly an engine of one of the aircrafts.
Yeah.
And he was tasked to reverse engineer as much as he could with the time he had, which is a limited amount of time. I believe he only had like an hour or something a day to work on it, or
Some,
just a few hours.
yeah, a couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah, just not as much time as really necessary. But he was in there, and the one thing he described was that it had it. I believe he said it created its own gravitational field, and that it kind of allowed it to have this hovering state. The story is that he goes in there and he's working on this extraterrestrial engine of a ship.
Let me jump in here before we get into it. This is a guy that if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't know the ins and outs of what we call Area 51. It's somewhere in the Nevada, Las Vegas area, I'm gonna say, in some part out there in the desert. And for many years, people or even presidents didn't want to say it was real. They all denied it that it was there. I think the only one that ever acknowledged that it was there, I think it was President Obama or maybe even President Clinton, one of them. But the majority of the presidents always say, nope, doesn't exist. And because of this guy, Bob Lazar, he said how it works, that they bring you in, they bust you in, but they fly you in also. So he kind of explains his verse, like what he remembers going through, what it is, everything high security. You couldn't talk. You couldn't. They had a bus where you couldn't really see through this dark windows or whatever. Same thing with the planes, and even where you worked, they worked in areas of total secrecy. So you wouldn't know what the guy next to you was working on, or you couldn't.
Oh
You
no,
were not allowed.
you knew what your lab partner was
Yeah,
working on, but you knew
yeah,
that there were other parts
yeah,
that other teams were working on, but you weren't allowed to know what they
yeah,
were. You had
yeah,
no idea what they were working on. You didn't get a word about it, and you were
yeah,
all in
exactly.
separate kind of parts of the facility to keep you guys apart. And the only time you would interact with another team, I believe, is when your studies aligned with another one. If there was some sort of correlation to understand how it worked. So if Team A's whatever they're working on somehow helps Team B's work in a better way, and it
Yeah,
helps you understand it, that's the only time there would be
yeah,
interaction, I
yeah.
believe.
I'm pretty sure you said that on his first day they showed him the alien craft, and it was an alien craft that
Uh,
he explains, but it was a non-working one. So his job was to go in there and look at it, and so you get a kind of like a view of how it's supposed to look, and then make it work now. Go reverse engineer and make this thing fly. That was his
ye-
job.
yeah, I believe he went in there and he first thought that it was just a new model, just
Yeah,
something that
yeah,
they were working on. It was just completely our technology, that it wasn't anything new. And I remember him saying something along the lines that he tapped it, like he touched it, and he said some comment complimenting it, and he actually got reprimanded for that because he
yeah.
touched it.
Yeah, he was only they were only there allowed to look through it. I remember him saying that the craft was real small, real cramped, and it
For
made
about a
sense.
four,
Yeah,
like people 4 foot, I believe he said is what it was like.
yeah. So it was really cramped in there for a regular sized human, but he kind of like draws. He has sketches of it, I think, and he shows and he says how Area 51 works, and he says the area he worked in was Sector 4, which is Section 4 of Area 51. And he tells, I don't know the atomic, I forget, there's this one particle that was not invented, and he kind of mentions it that that's what they needed to make this engine work. And then when he said that, when he came out public saying about this, God, I forget what the particle is that he kind of mentions, and everybody's like, well, that particle doesn't exist, and not too long ago they found out that it does, and he said it that they already had it. I forget. I'm not a scientific guy or whatever. He talks about that particle that they were missing, and that's what he worked on with this engine or whatever he was doing, and that these aliens had it, and that's how they made this thing work, and that they had it too, and that's what that's how they would fuel this engine.
I do know that he also stated that he actually got to see this thing fly a couple of times because
Right.
one time they called out his lab partner, and his lab partner had been there for a good while. So they called out his lab partner to come see this, and he tells them, "Hey, bring Bob." So Bob goes with him, and it was just some basic flight tests, and they got to see it lift off the ground. And I believe he said when it went forward, the disc, I believe it was a disc shape, but it kind of leaned forward as well, to go forward. So they did have advanced flight maneuvers as well. But if I'm correct, he said that from the schedule it was always on Wednesdays or one of those days. But it was always because that was one of the days where there was the least amount of traffic coming through. So he did get to see it fly. I do remember him also stating that it gave him a better picture of how the engine kind of worked, because you he mentioned that there was a noise, there was like a little buzz, there was something you could hear coming from the engine, but once it was in the air, a decent a decent amount of feet between it and the ground, you couldn't hear it anymore.
And this is the one of the things I mentioned, the element. It's called element 115.
Is it 115? Okay.
Yeah, it's element 115. And that's what he did. He was an engineer, and he claims that, like you said, that he worked on this spacecraft, and then the aliens were at the base. He mentions that that there was aliens at the base of Area 51, which is in Groom Lake out there in the Nevada desert. And this is one of the weirdest things because he got famous because of this news guy called George Knapp. He basically told them, hey, this is what's going on. If you really want to, because he was tired of just hiding this. He felt that the people should know about this. So what he would do, he would take out his friends out to the Nevada desert, Groom Lake at night. Then he'd tell them, hey, this is going to happen. There's going to be a ship here at midnight, and we're going to stand here at night. And so you could look at it. He would tell his friends that, and then he would go out there with his friends, and they would record, basically what he said, what's going on. He's like, hey, you see that? There he goes. And that what was going on. And George Knapp, I'm sorry, which was a news outlet guy out there. He became very famous because of him. I think he works now for one of the radio stations. I forget what it's called. But anyway, he did this interview with him, and he told him, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. And eventually it came out. They found out it was Bob Lazar, and he got fired and all that stuff. And again, the people that claim to be the bunkers came and looked at him. Well, you never worked at Area 51. We can't find you anywhere. We can't find that you have a master. We can't find anything. You have, he said that, and that's what it happens all the time. When somebody says they work at something, I feel like the government always does something to erase everything. They couldn't find anything on him. They couldn't find that where he worked. That he even worked at Area 51. And matter of fact, he didn't have any type of degree, supposedly. No degrees. Supposedly he went here to Pierce College here in LA, Woodland Hills.
Yeah, I know that they erased most of his stuff, that they couldn't. There was hardly any information about his background, where he might have worked and the school he went to, but any possible degrees that he's had.
But what people got wrong is he had a paycheck stub. And he showed it to them. This is my paycheck stub. And he showed this paycheck stub to, I think, George Knapp. And he goes, hey. So this guy was playing, he was being paid as I guess they weren't, just because they're not in the military, they get paid as contractors. So that's one of the reasons he got erased and all this crap. But he was being employed by this company working out of Area 51. So believe him or not, he made... He became one of the biggest alien guys there, Bob Lazar. He made Area 51 famous because of what he says was going on there.
I mean, I know Area 51 has always been a topic. I know Bob Lazar had really shed some light and brought a lot of probably attention to it after saying he worked there. This is what's going on, kind of to the point where, people you just don't know what's happening there. With Area 51 nowadays, you hear things like, yeah, it's a testing site. We test weapons, we test aircraft around there. And there's always... Bob Lazar definitely helped with Area 51 being more well known. I mean, it was already pretty well known, I'd say, because there were people asking about it. But once Bob Lazar came out, it really came into question, what exactly are they testing over there? And with that, now they'll say, hey, yeah, we test aircraft, we test weaponry, like live bombs, so on and so forth. We test these things at this site. And Area 51 has grown, I believe, since Bob Lazar worked there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of theories that it's an underground base or whatever, because there's pictures now of Area 51. So it's definitely it's definitely there. There's a military base. So I think most people are aware of what's going on out there. That's where the U-2 bomber came out of. They tested there. The other bomber, the B-2 or whatever, the Aurora, flies faster than the speed of sound. It's called the Aurora. And many other, black projects.
I want to say that's what it's called, but I'm not too familiar with that term.
Yeah. Well, let's move on maybe to the last things. When people think about aliens and stuff, this is one of the last things, and I guarantee you it's not just a movie. The MIB, the Men in Black. Ever heard of people reporting cases or incidents, and then these guys in black come and knocking on your door? These weird looking guys and looking pale.
Looking pale, very monotone in voice, I believe as well. and
Some of
they're
them missing eyebrows and stuff like that, looking like human but not really. Kind of
something
weird.
off. There's
Yeah,
something off about the way they
yeah,
look. Yeah.
yeah. They look like they're old. I mean, they're dressed, but they kind of dress like back in the 50s. A lot of people report like they're not into like the modern times or whatever, and they
No,
look.
they're dressed in like kind of like a. They've
Yeah,
got the suits and whatnot. Kind of, I wanted to say kind of like a well-dressed detective of the
yeah,
50s.
yeah, exactly. And supposedly they come and threaten you, and they tell you, "Hey, what you saw is not what you saw. Otherwise, we're gonna hurt you or your family." And they come and really threaten you. They scare you, and a lot of people get scared just by appearance alone. And I think I would too. I would be scared.
There are different accounts. There are some that say that they came in and asked questions, and then they clarified this isn't what you saw, this and that,
Yeah.
and they'd say like don't tell anybody. And some of them would leave subtle threats, but I do believe there are accounts where people have said that they have been outright threatened by them.
Yeah, yeah. Or yeah, like stuff like that. They go through your house, or supposedly that you come into your own apartment, they're sitting there on the couch or whatever, and you're like startled, or they come look at you, they come looking for you at work. Matter of fact, there's a video about this hotel person in I want to say
Oh,
Colorado.
yeah, I've seen it where you see them come in too.
Yeah, and they're looking for this manager. Supposedly he kind of reported an incident or seen UFOs. I don't know where, but that day he was off. He called in or something. But these two black men came in and they started asking for him at his job site. And this coworkers called him, "Hey, these two weird guys are here looking for you, man," and they won't leave, and they keep on coming and looking for you. And then it's one of the they were caught on camera looking like Men in Black, looking like these weird guys in black suits and glasses and stuff.
I think they even had hats too.
Right? Exactly. And even the people were like, yeah, they had no eyebrows. They look
They were
weird as heck.
pale. You
Yeah.
look at them, they look like they were painted white.
And people get freaked out, they get intimidated, and part of the alien agenda were to suppress the truth, I guess. And so these people are always around alien stuff. Okay, well let's end it there. I'm gonna give you the mic. Any last thoughts or anything you got?
Any last thoughts? Sure. I would say myself based just right now, if my opinion on aliens, I think that it's 100% a possibility. I know not for sure. There are definitely some things that can be appealing, and equally there are some that are just not as appealing in terms of evidence. But from a scientific standpoint, the odds of there being other life are extremely high. And the odds of them being able to travel light stars, well, we don't know how, but that could 100% be possible. I think aliens, if they have visited us, there are so many questions to why they haven't come out, why this, how do you hide something like that? Just so many questions. But me, the one thing I will say is always have an open mind for the possibility.
That's all you got?
Open. That's all I have on this one because aliens is a very tough topic. You know,
Yeah.
you ask me about aliens, it's
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
just the concept of it is insane. You're talking about a race of beings that can travel from point A to point B in while within their lifespan. Either they
Yeah.
live that long or they can travel that fast, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because again, we're talking about light years away, and light years is not a time; is distance. We're
Yeah.
talking about things where it would take us 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, something beyond our lifetime to reach. We can barely go to, you know, Uranus, for example. Traveling just to Mars would take it took almost 4 months to get to the moon. To
Yeah.
get to Mars, it might take a year or two just to get there, or more. We're talking about our own solar system in which it takes years to travel, and we're talking about 100 or more just to reach the next star. And
Yeah.
you've got this race coming in. That's
Races.
incredible. Or races, yes. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
What they can do, how they're doing it. They're traveling that fast from a soul. And some people don't understand the magnitude of just how far these things are. And it's amazing for that kind of technology. You know, you look at NASA, they are advanced for sure. We're sending probes. We're sending those little like a drone things on Mars to collect samples to
Yeah.
go there. You know,
Yeah.
it's where we've only explored our own system.
Yeah.
it's outstanding to think that there could be a race to travel from a distant system,
Yeah.
and that alone, the thought of that is amazing, which is why I always find it so difficult. You have a race that can travel from star to star. They end up here and find life, and this is how they interact with it. I
Mm,
find it hard to believe. I think something that I kind of take into account is, why would a race that superior be interested in us?
mm,
You look at us and we're primitive to them. We can
mhm,
barely travel our own system. You
yeah.
know, we're still stuck. We're destroying our own planet. Why are they interested in a race that's self-destructive?
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons, because we're self-destructing. But let me give you my take. I'm one of those guys that want to believe. I'm like the Fox Mulder. Have you ever seen that show, The X-Files?
Yeah.
I want to believe, and sometimes it's scarier to actually get the answer. And I think it's one of the reasons that our government kind of keeps us on the back burner when it comes to telling us the truth on stuff like this, because I don't think the majority of us wouldn't be able to comprehend or accept the fact that there's other beings here in this world, in this mass universe that we live in. But I really feel that I actually believe that these entities, or whatever they are, they've been here before. Just look at the like what is it, ancient civilizations. I really feel they had something to do with that. Look at the pyramids out in Egypt, the
Some of the
pyramid.
hieroglyphs pointing
Yeah,
out like
well,
the
exactly.
technology we didn't have, like the helicopter.
Exactly. Supposedly back then we were uh, primitive. Supposedly. You get me, the type of
Yeah,
technology.
yeah.
Look at the pyramids out in Central America, in Mexico, or whatever. There's evidence that these things have been here before. So I want to believe that we are not the only ones out here. I believe that they were to come down here. I think that we would freak out. I think the majority of us would freak out, maybe even myself. So I gotta be careful what I ask for. But yeah, I never want to get abducted, because that'll be gut wrenching, and I'll probably freak out myself. But I just hope that someday that the truth will come out and tell us, you know what, there are other things here, and as long as the government just tells us, you know what, there's other things here, but I don't think you guys want to know about it. Like, and if you do, God, good luck, because there's scary stuff going on behind closed doors or whatever. Yeah, and I hope that these stories and little cases that we talked about kind of opens up people's point of view on the alien stuff. I really do, and I hope they kind of I hope they get a different view and kind of start thinking about that. Damn, we're not the only ones out here.
Absolutely. Again, even if my big point is to have an open mind to it, because although you may not see it, although some of the stories can definitely be unbelievable while the others are a little more believable,
Yeah.
the big point I make is the possibilities, the fact that there is a quantifiable number that we can find of the possibility of life on another planet is incredible. The odds of it are not out there. They're not insane. In fact, it's really high because of just how expansive our galaxy is. So,
Yeah.
that being said, it's not by any means impossible that there is other life other than us out there.
Exactly. Exactly. No, and it hits right on the dot, because I don't think we are. I think eventually the truth will come out. The truth is out there, and so this is Gus, and thank you, Anthony, for coming on the Everything Goes podcast.
Of course, it's always a pleasure to be
You
here,
know,
especially for such a topic.
I love talking about these things. I know it's not our traditional kind of thing that we talk about, but it's something that I hope that people kind of like open up their minds and just think about it, something different. So thanks, Anthony, for joining the Everything Goes podcast. Guys, you could always catch us on Instagram on the Everything Goes podcast, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. And if you like, give us a rating, give us a thumbs up, and share. Tell us what's up. Leave us a rating. Leave us a comment. Tell us what other topics you guys want to hear. And thanks again, Anthony, for coming on the Everything Else podcast, man. I'm glad we
Of
talk
course.
about something that I'm passionate about. I mean, as you could tell, I could probably keep on talking about aliens and stuff like that, but it's just too much to talk about. It's too many cases. There's too many stuff. And hopefully we just touched a little bit of the pot there.
Yeah, this is a big topic. There's always so much to talk about. This one you can go on for hours,
Yeah,
hours if you
exactly.
don't. Yeah, very
Exactly.
big one.
I'm talking about whatever happens to the Mayans, man. What happened out there in Machu Picchu? What happened to them, man? That'll be it, guys. Then thanks, Anthony, and I'll see you guys next week.
Of course.